Hey everyone, there's one last thing that I want to cover about Saul and how he represents the lost during this 3 days research that we're doing. We saw that through his trial, through his encounter with Christ and his trial, he came to know the Lord. But I want to point out now what is to follow for him. What his journey will be, okay? This is about how we look at what his journey and what we can learn about it and how it compares to the lost. Okay, here in verse 15 we see, it says, "But the Lord said unto him," that's talking to Ananias. The Lord is talking to Ananias here. "Go thy way." He tells Ananias, "Go thy way." Now he's speaking of Saul. "For he," Saul, "is a chosen vessel unto me, to bear my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. For I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake." Okay, excuse me. Now we know Saul, he was a persecutor of Christians before he knew the Lord. And see, that is in a tremendous way that the Lord would be able to use Saul, because here he takes a man that persecuted, beat, imprisoned, and even had killed those that followed Christ. And now he himself is a follower of Christ. And he is going to have to suffer persecution. We're going to see that here in a few minutes. He's going to have to suffer for the name of the Lord. Because it says, "For I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake." All right, then we're going to turn back over here to where we were at. Let's see if I can get the scripture on the thing here. Where we see that he's speaking of his, excuse me, he recounts his conversion of the scripture we just saw, where he come to know the Lord. And he says, "And I said, What shall I do, Lord? And the Lord said unto him, Arise, and go into Damascus, and there it shall be told thee of all things which are appointed for thee to do." So the Lord was going to have instructions for him. So here we see that even though he was going to have to suffer for the name of the Lord was going to be his guide. All right, and then we see, I think it's further down here, how it says, "Make haste and get thee quickly." Now this is the Lord telling Saul, "Make haste and get thee quickly out of Jerusalem, for they will not receive thy testimony concerning me." Now this is where the Lord is warning him that he's to leave where he's at, because they will not welcome him, and he will be in danger. So here, not only do we see in this verse up here in verse 10, and this is in Acts 22, we see how God is going to be instructing him, but he is also going to be giving him warnings and telling him where he is in danger at, where it is safe. So we can clearly see that this is talking about things that will be, most likely, this applies to time in the tribulation, okay? Because God will be guiding and people will be suffering for his name's sake. And it is about the lost that have refused the Lord and ended up in tribulation, and they're going to have to suffer for his name's sake. But he is going to guide them, He's going to give them instruction. He's going to give them warning. He's going to keep them safe, okay? And one thing else I wanted to point out was where we see, this is, I believe, what we see here with Saul, and how he is a chosen vessel, and he is to be told of how he will suffer for the Lord's name, and he will be instructed and guided and protected and warned all through his walk with the Lord. And this is beyond what the Lord is showing me here, is beyond what we see in our lives now. This is what the lost, what their journey will be like once they decide to follow the Lord. Once the tribulation has begun, they will certainly have a struggle, and they will suffer for his name. But he will be there to guide them and to instruct them and to keep them safe and to give them warnings and to tell them where's a good place to go, where's a good place not to go. But when we look at that aspect of what the lost will come up against during the tribulation, I can't even begin to imagine what it will be like. It's going to be beyond anything we've ever encountered, I'm sure. And that's why it's so important to come to the Lord before that time gets here, so that you don't have to endure all the things that those that want to follow the Lord will have to do during the tribulation, to be able to not come into the hands of the Antichrist and not turn to Satan to follow the Lord. But I wanted to point out something that we saw whenever I did the hurricane videos. And we looked at the first martyr, which was Stephen, okay? When we look at how it's told to Saul that he will suffer for the Lord's name's sake, we clearly know that the Bible teaches us that there will be martyrs. There will be those who are beheaded for the name of Christ. And although it's not told to us exact in the scriptures, I did a lot of homework on what had happened to Paul, because Saul later became Paul after he was converted. And it is very strongly believed by many that Saul was beheaded himself. He ended up in prison in Rome during the time of Nero. And it is believed that he was beheaded just before Nero committed suicide. But my point in bringing that up is we know that during the times that are ahead, there are going to be martyrs for Christ. We already see it today. It's happening all around this globe. Some places, it's a lot more what would you say, a lot more of a problem. Don't even begin to cover it. You know what I'm trying to say. In some places you see a whole lot of it, and then there are other places that you may see not as much of it, and then other places you may not see any of it. But to some degree there is a lot of Christian persecution going on. We're seeing that even in the United States. But we know that beheadings for the name of Christ and martyrdom, even outside of beheading, is taking place every day in this world. It may not be right where you are, but it has already begun. And increasing, I might add. And my point in bringing that up is the lost that go into the tribulation And as we've seen with Saul, he had an encounter with Christ that brought him to his knees, that brought turmoil and difficulty beside him that he struggled with, because he realized what he had been. And then he turned to the Lord, okay? These that find themselves in that situation, they're going to have to wholeheartedly trust in the Lord 100%. Now, He's going to take care of them once they give themselves to Him and they follow Him. Like we saw, He's going to instruct them. He's going to give them guidance. He's going to direct them in safety. He is going to provide for them and take care of them, but it's just as we saw with Saul. They will be persecuted for the name of Christ. Now, I don't know exactly if it's that everyone will be beheaded that follows Christ, or a large portion and some will escape. I don't know that, but I do know this, that the Lord clearly showed me that the first martyr, Stephen, and this is in Acts chapter 7, beginning in verse 54, we see that Stephen, as he was about to be killed, the Lord gave him a vision of heaven, and he saw God in heaven, and he saw Jesus at his right hand, and God gave that vision to Stephen so that Stephen would see what is waiting for him, and Stephen would know what they were about to do to his physical body did not matter. And I believe that's what God is showing us here. For those that are lost, that find themselves in this situation, yes, it's going to be horrific, but you can rest in the promise of God that in the end you will be with Him, you will be His. And here I believe, as we see with Stephen, those that are martyred will be comforted by the Lord being present with you and showing you what's waiting for you, to where you won't even concern yourself to what's happening to the physical body. And I think that's one of the reasons the Lord wants these videos made, so that people will see the truth. The ones that are left, they will see the truth in what has been spoken, and see the truth in how it applies to them, and they will seek the Lord. But I'm going to cut this off right here. I just wanted to make this last point about Saul and the lost during the tribulation period, and how the Lord is going to guide once they seek Him, and how those that are martyred will be comforted with the presence of God, and He will be showing them things so glorious that what they're about to encounter in the physical won't even matter. And I hope these make a difference to someone. Thank y'all. Bye.